This is going to be a fuel pump replacement video on the SZ and SY territory. How I diagnosed this car was, first up, when you turn the ignition onto accessories like that, you don't hear a fuel pump priming. You should have a distinct sound of the fuel pump turning on and priming, but with this car we don't hear anything. Next up, what I did was climb underneath the car to where the fuel filter is, just on the left hand side, and I undid this 14mm, that is the fuel line right there, and just backed it off a bit, and once again I cycled the ignition and I couldn't see anything at all, any fuel at all coming out of that when I was turning the accessories on and off. So the last thing I did, just to rule out that it was any fuses or any relays that were faulty, was to come up into the engine bay here, just pop that cover off and check the fuses and relays. So with the owner's manual in hand, I could see here that the fuel pump was right next to the horn relay, which is these two here. And what I did, I swapped these two over. So I swapped the horn relay, which is this one, with the fuel pump relay, and I tried starting the car. It wouldn't start. So the next thing I did was find the fuel pump relay, which is, where is it? This one down here. So it's a 30 amp fuse, which is right next to the horn as well there. So that one was this one here. What I did, I popped out that 30 amp fuse and checked the fuse, and it was good. And I ended up getting a power tester. So it was just a standard sort of power tester like this one here. And what I did with the tip, I turned the ignition on and I probed this 30 amp fuse down here, which is the fuel pump fuse, and it had power coming to it. What I did also was come back to this relay while the ignition was on and tested the terminals at the bottom of the relay, and to both of them that should have power had power coming to them, so that ruled out that there was any wiring issues involved why this car wouldn't start. So the only thing left to do now is to remove the fuel pump, which unfortunately with these cars is right underneath the car itself, so that's it there. The only way you can do it is remove the whole tank. Luckily it's not too hard to do on these, so let's get cracking. So first thing that you really want to do, because we're going to be working with the fuel tank and we don't want any power whatsoever there, is to disconnect the battery. So I'm just using a 10mm to take the negative terminal off and put that aside like so. So I got the car up on jack stands as well as some ramps. So that gives us probably about ½ a meter from underneath there just to slide out that fuel tank. I'm going to be using just a standard floor jack as well as a bit of a timber sleeper to help support it while I lever it down. It doesn't help that I've got 3/4 of a tank of fuel in the car at the moment, so it's going to be a bit heavier, but got to do what you got to do. So I'll climb in underneath and just show you all the mounting points for the fuel tank. So these are the mounting points. As you can see, we've got the gearbox there. So looking back, we've got one there, another one next to the tail shaft, and we got another one right there just underneath the tail shaft there, and on this side we've got one there, and I think another one down the back here, and that's basically it. Oh, there's one there up underneath the rear diff. Yeah, so I think there's about 6 of them in total. So I've just gone through and loosened off all the bolts around the fuel tank, and what I've used is there was a 13 mil. I've used this 1/2 inch extension. I've used a 15 mil and a 15 mil deep on a 1/4 inch extension. So there's a tail shaft for this one. There's a tail shaft just up above it, so you might have a bit of difficulty sort of getting to it when you undo that one, but it is possible. I just did it. So there was 5 bolts holding it on. I mean 3 bolts and 2 nuts that were holding it on. So the fuel tank is basically ready to come down. So I forgot one crucial thing, if I can find it, and that is the filler tube, which is up there. Let's see if I can get a bit of light onto it. There we go. Up there. Where is it? Right there. So that is an 8 mil. I've got to get my hand up there and loosen that off. So with the filler neck, what I ended up doing is dropping the spare wheel and coming in through the back here and undoing that hose clamp at the back and pushing that pipe off from the filler neck from the back here. So I've done a couple of things off camera here, simply because it was quite difficult to do this whilst holding a camera and trying to do it. First thing was I removed this plug that was connected down there to that. And how I did that was, there was a little clip like this. Actually it was sitting like this. What I did was I pushed this little tab up here. Yeah, push that there up with a little pick that I had. Like that, I think it was, yeah, and I pushed it up like that, and then this popped back. Mind you, this is very hard to do because, as you can see, that Ford doesn't give you much cable. Essentially, the tank was a fair bit sitting quite higher up. So yeah, that was pretty difficult to do. But eventually I got it off. The other thing was I removed all the fuel lines as well. So that's a fuel line there, and how I removed that was sort of the same way. Let's see if I can just demonstrate. Alright, so what I did, I got this little pick and I stuck it in there, and essentially I pushed these tabs on the side out, and then eventually it popped off. It's not the right way of doing it. There's a special tool that you can use to do it, which I'm sure you can buy from like Autobarn or Super Cheap or something like that. I used a completely wrong way of doing it because I didn't have the special tool, and I highly advise that you probably get the right tool because it was a lot of fiddling around to get it done. And as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3 fuel lines that were connected to the actual fuel pump, which is this here. So I removed all them, and there's number 2. I labeled them 1, 2, 3 in the direction that they come off. And then I could finally lower the fuel tank down further. So after I lowered the fuel tank down further, I got this little bar and a hammer to use as a chisel. And what I did, I lined it up like so, and then just hit that with a hammer a few times. And what that did is it released this ring here that sits around the fuel tank. I don't know if you can see that, but hopefully I can show you that it's been loosened off. There we go. That ring was released. I can now take that ring off and remove the fuel pump. It comes as a complete assembly. So when you remove the pump, there's a rubber seal there, that green thing there. You just want to make sure you don't disturb it, and when you put the new one in, you don't disturb it when you're putting it back in, otherwise you'll get a bad fuel smell coming up in through the car. So with the new pump, it just comes with a float, which you got to clip into the side here. Pretty straightforward, just like so. And that is a side-by-side comparison of the two. When I took the old one out, I did note the orientation of it, and I did mark the tank in line with this sort of, what do you call it, line that goes like that. So what I did when I put that ring on, I actually pushed the pump down, because this goes up and down. So you've got to push that down, make sure the orientation is right, and then twist that ring on. Once you get on a little bit, I just went around with this chisel and this hammer, and in each sort of corner I just slowly tightened it up and just kept working its way around. It was pretty tight because there's not much room there, but you got to do what you got to do. So I did a little bit more off camera, decided to take the muffler out just to have a little bit more room, so that I'd have a little bit more room when connecting all these fuel lines and the plug and that. It just gives you a fair bit more room up here to actually get your head up there and have a look and see what you're doing. But all the fuel lines are now connected exactly as I labeled them. The plugs are in. So the only thing that's really left is to bolt this fuel tank back up and put this muffler back in, and I should be sweet to do a test fire. Alright, so the muffler's back in. Now we're pretty much ready for a test start. So let's see what happens. There we go. She is running. Doesn't look like we have any leaks too, which is a good thing. So I've pretty much just got the tank left to put in, which is the opposite of taking it out. I'm just going to say a couple of things if you plan on doing this job. Firstly, do it on a hoist. This is the difficult way of doing it. It's a very difficult way of doing it, I must say. If you can, do it on a hoist. Have the proper tools, have the fuel line tools, have the fuel pump top removal, the ring, whatever it is, removal tool. It's going to save you a lot of stuffing around as well. And don't do it how I'm doing it on the ground, because out of 1 to 10 scale on difficulty, it's probably about a 9.5 doing it this way. So I would not recommend doing it. It's going to be very difficult if you do. So till next time, see you later.